I'll be honest with you, the very first night I moved into my new place I thought I'd made the best decision of my life. I'd saved for years, cut corners, skipped vacations, drove the same old pickup until it coughed its last breath, all so I could finally afford a house with something I'd always wanted, a little pool tucked neatly in the backyard. Nothing huge or fancy, just mine. That first night, I remember laying in bed, window cracked open, listening to the hum of the crickets and looking out at the faint blue glow of the water. I fell asleep smiling like a kid on Christmas Eve. But the next morning, well, that smile didn't last long because I woke up to laughter splashing and music so loud it rattled my kitchen windows. I pulled on some shorts and stumbled out back, thinking maybe some neighbors had gotten lost. Instead, I found myself staring at what looked like a scene out of a cheap summer music video: 3 women lounging in my chairs, a Bluetooth speaker blasting some pop song, and floaties bouncing around in my pool. I froze for a second, thinking maybe I was still dreaming, but the sharp smell of sunscreen and cheap wine told me it was real. And there she was, front and center. The one I'd later know as Karen. She wore a wide straw sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and that smug kind of posture you only see in people who think the world revolves around them. I cleared my throat and told them straight this was private property, my home, my pool, and they needed to leave right away. Karen didn't even flinch. She tilted her head, barely turned her face toward me, and said, "Who are you?" in that sharp tone, like I was the one intruding. I told her I was the new owner, emphasized that the sale had gone through, the house was mine, and this wasn't some community pool. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and muttered something about how she would have been told if that were true, because she had connections with a realtor. Then she stood up, water dripping down onto my deck, gave me this tight little smile that made my stomach turn, and said, "We'll see about that," before leading her friends out the gate like she was giving them a tour of property she owned. I stood there for a long time after they left, staring at the ripples in the water, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. Part of me wanted to laugh. Who has the audacity to throw a pool party in a stranger's backyard? But deep down, something about the way she said, "We'll see about that," made me uneasy. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. And I was right to be uneasy, because that woman wasn't done, not by a long shot. Over the next week, I tried to shake it off. I even told myself maybe it was a one-time thing, a misunderstanding. Maybe she'd embarrassed herself enough to never try it again. But then the cameras I'd installed started sending me alerts. The footage didn't lie. Every single time I left for work, she'd waltz right back in. Sometimes it was just her, lying out in my chair with a smug look. Other times she brought a friend or two, snacks, drinks, even a ridiculous inflatable swan that I'd never seen before. She treated my backyard like it was her private resort. And the worst part was, I couldn't figure out how she kept getting in. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks. That's when it hit me: she must have had a cloned key from the previous owner. The previous owner. By then I was furious, so I tried to handle it the grown-up way. I went to the HOA president, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd take me seriously. Big mistake. The president listened with that glazed-over look you give a telemarketer, then shrugged and said there wasn't much they could do. Turns out she and Karen were practically best friends, which explained the dismissive attitude. That was the moment I realized I was completely on my own in this fight. And I'll be real with you, being pushed into a corner does something to a person. It makes you creative, makes you tap into parts of yourself you didn't even know were there. So, I called up my buddy Jake, a chemist I'd known since college. Over a couple of beers I laid out the situation, the trespassing, the entitlement, the way Karen carried herself like she was untouchable. Jake listened, and then I brought up her vanity. Every single time before she jumped in the pool, she spent 5 minutes lathering herself in the same brand of high-end sunscreen, coating herself like she was preparing for battle. That was my golden ticket. I told Jake I needed something harmless to everyone else, but that would react to that specific sunscreen. His eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. A week later, he handed me a small, sealed container and said, "This'll do it. Say for everyone else. But if she's wearing that lotion, oh buddy, you're gonna see fireworks." I tested it myself first, just to be sure. Mixed a bit with sunscreen in a bucket of water. At first nothing happened, but then, like some kind of magic trick, the water turned this deep swampy green, and the skin beneath went even greener. I couldn't stop grinning, so I set the stage. Early Saturday morning I scrubbed that pool until it sparkled, poured in Jake's mix with precision, and waited. The sky was clear, the sun brutal, the kind of day you know Karen wouldn't resist. Around noon, sure enough, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I pulled up the live feed, and there she was, Karen, 2 friends in tow, sunscreen glistening like armor. She strutted in like she owned the place, tossed her hat on the chair, and dove right in. Her friends followed, shrieking and laughing like they were at some 5-star resort. For a few minutes, it was calm, then it started. Karen looked down at her arms, froze, and let out this sharp, panicked yelp. Green blotches were spreading across her skin fast, crawling over her shoulders and face like vines. Her friends glanced at each other, then at themselves, and the screaming started. They clawed over each other, slipping and sliding, scrambling to get out of the water. Karen shrieked at the top of her lungs, cursing me, screaming that I'd poisoned her. They grabbed towels, phones, anything they could, and in a move that would have been hilarious if it wasn't so ridiculous, Karen pulled out her phone, hit record, and started ranting into the camera about how I'd tried to kill her. She posted it online, probably expecting an outpouring of sympathy. What she got instead was the internet turning her into a joke. Within hours, the memes started rolling in. My favorite was a clip of her ranting with the caption, "The Incredible Sulk." By the time I got home that afternoon, half the neighborhood had seen it. Karen was pacing up and down my driveway, blotchy green, stomping in flip-flops, yelling, so loud the neighbors came out pretending to check their mail just to watch. The stench from the reaction was awful, like rotten eggs mixed with burnt plastic. The second she saw me, she stormed up, jabbing her finger in my face. "You'll pay for this. You think you can humiliate me?" she screamed. I calmly pulled out my phone, hit record, and said, "Smile for the camera, Karen." That only fueled her rage. Her friends stood behind her, still half green, trying to shrink into the background, but it was too late. The crowd was already laughing, pointing, recording. Across the street, the HOA president peeked out, her face tight with embarrassment, but she didn't dare step in. 2 days later, Karen tried to make good on her threats. She stormed into the police station, ranting about chemical assault and attempted murder. But the officers had already seen the footage, not just of her meltdown but of her trespassing dozens of times, and when they tested the pool, they confirmed the additive was safe, perfectly legal, just not compatible with her fancy sunscreen. The kicker, she admitted, on record, that she'd been using my pool without permission. The case was dismissed before it even got started. The fallout was brutal. The HOA tried to cut ties with her, but it was too late. The memes had taken on a life of their own. Local teens started calling her Shrek's cousin whenever they saw her at the grocery store. Weeks later, you could still see faint green stains on her elbows. She stopped going near my property, stopped showing her face at HOA meetings, stopped acting like the queen bee she thought she was. And me, I finally had my pool back. I spent the following weekend floating alone, drink in hand, grinning at the thought of her face when the green first spread across her arms. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been served poolside, with a side of pure humiliation. Now here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think she got what she deserved? Was I justified in setting that trap, or should I have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see where everyone stands on this one. Because honestly, I'm curious, was this just karma doing its thing, or did I go too far?